I'm grating a little bit of lemon zest that's going to flavor the broth that I'm using to make this, which adds an even springier flavor. You'll need a teaspoon of lemon zest, and you'll want to add that to a pot with 4 cups of chicken broth or fish stock if you want, and 2 cups of water. You can certainly make a very nice light shrimp broth with the shells of the shrimp if you want to, but of course you may want to buy your shrimp shelled, and chicken broth is really delicious here too. I'm going to add some salt and pepper to that broth as well, a teaspoon and a quarter of kosher salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. For the rice portion of your risotto, which is the main portion I guess, you'll want to cut up an onion. You need about a cup of minced onion. You can get that from about 1 small onion. For risotto, I like to mince my onion as fine as possible so that it really breaks down in the rice, and you can't really notice it, but it just infuses everything with the delicious flavors. We like to make our risotto here in a straight-sided skillet. It is one of our favorite pans, and we use it frequently for a lot of stuff, but this wide surface area really helps with the evaporation of the liquid, which is important when you're making a risotto. So you want to saute your onion first before you add your rice. Add your onion to 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Saute your onion. You want to let it get translucent. Then add 1½ cups of arborio rice or carnaroli or violone nano. Those are all great short grain. Italian rice is perfect for risotto. They have a nice starch content, they hold their shape really well, and with the continued stirring, what you get is this really delicious creamy sauce, and that comes from using the right kind of rice. The most widely available is arborio, so pick that up when you see it at the store. Cook the rice, stirring until it's nicely coated with fat, a little bit translucent on the outside, and then add a 1/4 cup of white wine. You can skip this if you don't want to use the wine, but I find that it adds a delicious flavor, and you want to evaporate that completely out before you move on. Happens very quickly to a hot pan. And then a pinch of saffron, and then start adding your liquid. You want to add, I would say, like between 1/2 cup and 3/4 of a cup at a time, and you would cook, stirring until the liquid evaporates. Some of it evaporates and some of it is absorbed. That's the cooking method for risotto, and what happens is you'll find that you use a lot more liquid for the amount of rice than you would for a standard cooking method because some of it is evaporating. But the constant stirring is what makes it really, really creamy. You want to cook until almost all of the liquid is evaporated and or absorbed, like I said, before adding the next addition of liquid. I can see that most of the liquid is gone now. I'm adding some more. You want to continue doing this until the rice is cooked with just like a little bit of a bite, and that's when your risotto is ready to serve. Right before that happens, I'm going to add some shrimp and some peas to make this more of a meal. But this is a perfectly delicious dish, even without the shrimp and the peas, to be honest. Quite delightful. Grate some cheese if you're into multitasking during your waiting time. It takes about 20-25 minutes for the rice to cook completely. And in about the last, I would say 5 minutes, if you're going to add anything that needs to cook in the rice, then you're going to add that now. I have a cup of fresh peas here. You can use frozen, but you would add them off the heat later. So I'm adding those now because they're not cooked. And a pound of large shrimp that have been shells removed. Remember before I said that if you wanted to make a shell broth for this, you could. You just peel your shrimp, add them to some water, and cook for about 15 or 20 minutes. It's a very delicate broth, but it's nice here. Or you could add them to your chicken stock if you wanted to. So then you want to cook this until there's a nice creamy sauce around your rice. Your shrimp are cooked, your peas are cooked. Should take another couple of minutes. And what you're looking for, like I said, is a nice creamy sauce. Each grain should be surrounded by the creamy sauce, but it should not be stiff. It shouldn't mound up in a bowl. If it does, then it is not properly cooked. And I'll show you what I mean when I get there. I just added a lot of cold shrimp, so I'm going to turn my heat up a little bit, add a little bit of additional liquid. If at any time while you're cooking your risotto you find that you run out of liquid, just add a little bit more broth and keep it warm. It shouldn't be boiling the whole time, just a nice steam coming off of your liquid will keep it nice and hot. This is the point where you want to be careful. You don't want to overcook your shrimp. They will get tough, and that's not nice. We're getting very, very close. I can see that it is very nice and loose. It's a little difficult to tell what I'm talking about in terms of the looseness of the risotto when there's all this shrimp in here. But like I said, you don't want it to mound up. I'm going to turn the heat off now and add a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, 3 tablespoons of butter, and some lemon juice, about 4 teaspoons of lemon juice. Now, as your risotto sits off of the heat, it is going to seize up a little bit. So if you make it ahead and you are not serving it immediately, you want to have some of your broth sitting on hand. You can loosen it up. You certainly don't want to overcook it, but if you add just a little bit of broth and put it back on the heat for a second, it'll loosen right back up again. And adding the butter is the last and final touch of making it the most unctuous and delicious dish that it can be. When I was taught how to make risotto, they said that it should wave in the bowl like the sea, which I think is really a nice way of putting it. And you can see just the risotto part, even that I feel like is a tiny bit tight, so I'm gonna add a little tiny bit more liquid. And if your bowl is nice and warm, it keeps it from seizing up. So if you wanna go the extra step, put your oven-proof bowls into a 200-degree oven and keep them nice and warm while you're finishing your risotto, and then it will not cool it down when you put it in the bowl. See how it's moving and sort of nice? That's the way that it should be. There you go. And this is a pretty, this one is pretty hearty and nice for a meal, but if you do a simpler version without any add-ins, it's also a great way to start a meal. And it's really, really delicious. And try this version because it's super springy and spring has finally arrived. Enjoy. If you like recipes like this and you want more, make sure